This episode is sponsored by the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center, dedicated to supporting local businesses and entrepreneurs. It provides resources and services aimed at fostering business creation, growth, and retention. The center features the makerspace, where entrepreneurs and small businesses can have access to 3D printers, video production, and photography equipment, t-shirt printing, and more. Whether you're starting a new venture or looking to expand an existing one, the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center offers the tools and guidance to help you succeed. To learn more and get involved, visit innovationcenter.cc. Welcome to Explore Local Podcasts, presented by Visit Cedar City Brian Head and Cedar City Iron County Economic Development. My name is David Johnson, and the purpose of this podcast is to enhance economic development, grow local business, and give an inside look for visitors into Iron County and our quality of life that we have here. Today, our guest is Brandon Burk, who is the Cedar City Events Director for Cedar City. Welcome, Brandon.
Hey, David. How are you doing?
Doing good. I never get to see you. So.
I know, right?
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, I am the Economic Development Director for Iron County and Cedar City, and working in conjunction with Visit Cedar City Brian Head, we've decided to launch this great podcast to give kind of an inside look on Iron County and the great things that are going on with our economy and our quality of life. And Brandon happens to be one of my staff members in my department as the events director, and he has a fun history here in Cedar City. And so, Brandon, let's start off first high level. Tell us a little bit about what your role is as the Cedar City events director. Maybe give us some high level description of different events that we have here. And then let's as Nacho Libre would say, let's get down to the nitty gritty.
I still got to see that movie. David.
Yeah, you really. I can't believe you haven't seen it. It's
I know. I keep getting chastised for it, and staff made it.
Well, you know.
But I have been. I'm still learning, actually. I mean, I've been here in this role for since October of 2023, and there's a lot more to it than you might think. For starters, the obvious part is that our department oversees all of the city-run events. It's things like the downtown lighting ceremony, the half marathon, our spring fiesta, and we also do a couple of smaller campaigns like Love Where You Live. We do Cedar City Star Search. So anything that's run by the city, that's a big event, that's under our umbrella. But we also help facilitate the process of other organizations doing events in town if they need a permit, if they need to rent a park or work on city property, right. That sort of thing.
So let me interrupt you there. A lot of people don't understand the distinction between a city-run event versus a third-party event.
Sure.
And so help us understand what those distinctions are and why is there a distinction with these city-run events versus third-party events.
Sure. And one of the things that we're working on right now, I mean, we're kind of breaking it down to three different categories, right? So we have our city-run events. Those are events that are completely funded, run, organized, sponsored by the city. It comes out of our budget, which is a TRT budget, which we can talk a little bit more about.
Right, yeah, we'll get into that. So a couple examples of those strictly run city events would be like
the half marathon, downtown
the
lighting,
holiday lightings,
fiesta, exactly. Yeah. And then we have another category, which is events that we sponsor. So we help put our name on it. We give a little bit of money and resources, things like that, to events. And typically, because my department is sponsored or is funded by transient room tax, which is basically tourism tax.
Mm-hmm. And that tax is generated from
people
hotel stays, right?
Yeah,
and so that tax is then reinvested in the community to enhance quality of life. And it can be used for a variety of things. So events. We'll just go with events since that's what we're focused
that's the big
on.
One.
Yeah, events, just quality of life that's going to enhance our local community. Can't be spent, to just throw back into the general fund.
Yeah.
And so we have a great pot of funding.
We do. We get a lot of tourism, especially here in the summer, and even it's moving into the fall and the winter. We're starting to expand our reach outside of those summer months, when the Shakespeare Festival's running. But like outside of there too, we're getting a lot more tourism, and it's been.
Give a couple examples of those partnership.
Sure. So Belgium Waffle Ride is.
You gotta love that name.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure I fully understand it. I just keep thinking there's going to be waffles along the course.
Well, there are actually. They have these little packaged waffles at some of the aid stations,
like the Honey Stinger.
Yeah, not the Honey Stinger ones, but like they're almost like a little Belgian waffle in a plastic wrapper.
Really?
Yeah, you can get them at Costco too.
Wow. Do they have any like toppings to go?
Sometimes
along?
they're like no, they're not to go with them, but they're like topped with they have a little sugary sprinkle
goodness
on them.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
So Belgian Waffle Ride's a perfect example. We help fund that. We help with some of the marketing, and one of the reasons that we do that is because it brings bicyclists in from all over the country, in some cases all over the world.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have some international participants, right?
Exactly. And there are hundreds, of these folks who come in and they stay in hotels for multiple nights, which increases our transient room tax, which increases our events budget.
Right.
It also, anytime we bring tourism, it's not just about increasing my own budget, but helping the economy, right? Because when people come in from outside of town, they stay at hotels, but they also eat at our restaurants, they shop at our stores, and they throw a little extra money.
And that's some of the
Cedar
idea.
City pot.
I think a lot of people don't know that. People know Cedar City is Festival City USA, right? That's how we try to promote ourselves. That's why events are so essential to us. We have the Shakespeare Festival, and we just we have the Utah Summer Games. Hopefully, we'll be able to chat with both of them on this podcast too. But what a lot of people don't know is that events in Cedar City were specifically started to drive economic development here in the local economy. We knew the tourism and visitor opportunities that we have here, and so we're looking for more reasons to make Cedar City a destination, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and also just help boost the the business of these local businesses when people come into town, or even when it's locals doing an event, right? They tend to get involved more, shop more, get more. The businesses get more exposure at some of those events, and so it just helps all around, I think.
Yeah. So tell me, just because I'm curious for the public's sake, so Belgian Waffle Ride, it's not just unique here. Tell us about like the broader scope of the Belgian Waffle Ride. They're in multiple locations, right? And they chose to all make Cedar City part of that.
Yeah, they did. They're all over. I don't know where all of their races are, but they do a trifecta. And one of the things that I think is really cool about this upcoming year, and they're still going back and forth about finalizing the date. We know it's going to be in May next year.
All right, because it used to be in the fall, is that right?
It used to be in the fall.
We're moving it to the spring.
We moved it into April. April was still a little cold, so we're pushing it back a little bit further. We're going to try out
spring's
May
a little more
year.
unpredictable too.
It is, yeah. So this is a really exciting part about them moving it into May is that they do this little Triple Crown series that is in California and Arizona and here. And we're going to move to the third leg of that Triple Crown instead of being, I think,
so
it was
we're the
second
real
leg.
finish line.
Exactly. So which incentivizes people, they do it's easy to get to Phoenix, it's easy to get to San Diego, right? So they run those two, or they ride those two, and then they go, well, I'm only one step away from the Triple Crown, so it's more incentive to come to Cedar.
City.
Exactly. Because Cedar can be a challenging place to bring tourism to, even though we have a lot here. We're 2.5 hours from the closest international airport, right? And so, unless you're flying in from Salt Lake or flying in from, flying into St. George, it's not as easy for folks to get here.
Well, and one thing that people don't know, and we're obviously working on it, working with SkyWest Delta with our regional airport that we have here in Cedar City to create more flights. Yeah. And then there's St. George airport as well. And so, there are other options, but it's getting enough of the demand, right. To facilitate those options and expanding those options and getting better times, which is a whole nother discussion in and of itself. But it's interesting play to put the Belgian Waffle Ride as the third to end that trifecta as you were talking about. So
right. And then to kind of jump back a little bit to your first question about the three different types of events, right? So we had those city events we talked about. We have the third-party events. Belgian Waffle Ride is one of those. Also, the July Jamboree, we work closely with the Rotary to make that happen, and we help sponsor that event. But then there are other events that come that, if anybody wants to put on a party, a public party in Main Street Park, it's possible here. We have facilities around town. We have Bicentennial, we have Main Street Park, we have the Canyon Parks, West and East, different opportunities for local organizations to, put on a race or put on, an event that brings people, into their organization to get more recognition. All they have to do is go through our civic review process, which is an online software that we use to give out permits or rent out certain spaces. And so we help facilitate that process, but those organizations do all of their own funding. They get their own insurance, they bring in their own, restrooms or amenities and things like that. They bring in their own security, whatever they need.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So say I'm Joe Schmo and I thought, I really want to support, this nonprofit. And I want to start a 5K or something. What does the process look like for them? What are some of the high level criteria that they definitely have to have an event in a public space?
Sure. Well, the first thing that they'd want to do is figure out, obviously, where they want to do it, what the best route and that sort of thing, especially if it's a race or something like that.
Right.
And then the next step would be, as far as I'm concerned, you want to go to cedarcityut.gov/events. And on that page, you'll see a little button right along the top that says permits and reservations. And you click on that, and it'll take you to Civic Review. Civic Review is the application process. Anytime you want to do an event on public land here in Cedar City, city-owned property, I should say more specifically, you need to go through that process. And what happens there is you go through, you fill out the application, you tell us when it's going to be and where you want to do it, and it'll ask you for certain things like a map. It'll ask you to upload your insurance for the process, how you're informing the public, and then you'll click a bunch of little boxes about things that you might need to do. If you're running a race, maybe you're looking at the possibility of shutting down a road so that you can run down a certain, path.
Right.
Maybe you're looking at, having loud music in a place where there's a neighborhood, right?
Right.
You would check these boxes, and as you check each of those boxes, it sort of flags which departments need to be notified about your
do you need
event.
to shut down a street? So we've got to talk to the streets department. Is it a UDOT street? So have you gotten your permitting from UDOT?
Exactly.
So if someone... a lot of times when people hear I've helped do events throughout most of my career, and oftentimes when you say you got to get insurance, that scares people because they think they got to get this annual policy or something like that. From what I understand, and you tell me based on my experience, it's a one-time policy for the event. It's usually like $100 or a couple $100 maybe to pay for $1 million coverage or whatever the coverage requirements are. It's really not as scary as sometimes people think it is, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I get that a lot. I get the oh no, right? When you tell somebody, well, you got to have a certificate of insurance. But you're right. It's pretty easy to obtain. There are lots of insurance. All you have to do is go to Google and type in event insurance or one-time event insurance specifically.
And we're not promoting any of the top links on Google because those are usually like advertised scams. No, I'm just joking. I feel like every time I Google something, there's some sort of advertised scam, and I've got to go down 3 or 4 to get the real deal. But
I always skim past all the ones that say sponsored on them.
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
my personal,
that's just wise internet surfing. So, well, cool. Well, I kind of want to shift unless there's a little more you want to dive into about kind of the different types of events and processes. And I really want to dive into who is this Brandon Burk, right? Since I've been here, I feel like everybody knows you in some fashion, whether it's business owners, whether it's people in the arts, people at the city, people know who Brandon Burk is. Although, ironically, we do need to acknowledge on this podcast that we were both introduced to the city council on the same day.
Yeah.
And the question was asked if we were twins. Now, I just want you to look into this camera and clearly define the distinct difference. You've got a beard and I don't. So how could we be twins, right? And so, but one thing that has always impressed me is how well received and respected you are. And I'm not asking you to go on and brag about yourself, but tell me what brought you to Cedar City. Why did you come to Cedar City? Because, we're seeing a lot of great people that really contribute back to the community move here to Cedar City. And so tell me about your experience with that, and I'll just kind of,
Sure.
let you roll from there and pick your brain more as we go.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. It's really flattering to me actually that I feel so well received here, and so like to feel like I'm part of the community, because I didn't grow up here. I didn't move here until I was an adult, and
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay, Delaware,
Yeah.
East Coast boy.
Uh-huh.
All right, nice.
Yep, tiny little state, second smallest in the country.
All right, probably about the size of Cedar City. So.
That's that's about right.
Geographically speaking.
Right. About density, wise, a much bigger city than Cedar.
Sure.
Grew up about 2 hours from New York City, 2 hours from Washington, D.C., 15 minutes from downtown Philly, hour from the ocean. Delaware is a small state, but it's a big town.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a testament to Cedar City, and even though we are growing, even though it is getting bigger, even though people are moving in from all over, right? It's been really easy to assimilate here. I came in as a member of I went to grad school in Las Vegas, and for theater.
Which school?
UNLV.
All right.
And I was coming up here occasionally to see the Shakespeare Festival. And I always loved the Shakespeare Festival. The first time I came up here, this place was a magical place to me. Here was in the middle of the mountains, this beautiful professional Tony Award-winning theater company. And
third Shakespeare Festival in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was really enamored with this place. I auditioned to try and get in a couple of times. I didn't get in. And then I went off and
first you don't succeed.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I went off and had my own career for a while and traveled around the world, got a little more experience. And I was back in Las Vegas. I was running a theater company down there, and I was also working as a guest artist at UNLV. And the Shakespeare Festival came in to hold auditions for the grad students, and the director of the show I was working on was like, "Hey, if you want to get in and audition too, that you're welcome to." And I was like, "Okay." They never picked me, And so I went in and auditioned, and I got hired, and I ended up working the next 4 seasons here. And
really?
Each year that I came here in the acting company, it just felt more and more like home. And the way that I think Cedar's great at receiving people in general, right? It's just a very friendly, genuine community. It was I'm a runner, and one of the first places that I ever lived or spent any amount of time were when you ran past people on the street, they made eye contact, smiled, and waved. You know what I mean? You run in. I lived in L.A., I lived in New York, I lived in Las Vegas, and when you run by people there, they look at the ground.
Well, you're trying to make sure they don't run you over because they could care less that you're running by.
Right. No, but people were so welcoming and friendly here. And then on top of that, I think it accelerated things because I was an actor at the festival, and the festival is, a part of, it's such a big part of the community here. And the local businesses really are warm to you because they know how much of a boon to the economy the festival is over the summer. And so they really take good care of the actors here.
Right.
And I just gravitated to that. And this just started to feel more and more like home. And so by the end of my 4th season, I was looking for a way to kind of settle down, stop traveling around the country all the time. And an opportunity opened up for a permanent position in the development department at USF. So I put in for it, and I got it, and that's what moved me to Cedar. So I spent a year working with them, and then I made some shifts in my career, and I moved over to a company called Box 86 Media, which is a video production company, and worked for them for a few years.
And that's where you met our good friend Dallas Smith.
That is where I met Dallas Smith.
Produce this podcast.
Yeah.
All right.
That's right. Yeah. We worked together for a while, and I loved it there. But things shift. Life always changes, and eventually I went and I kind of got a hankering for getting back into the theater world, or at least having it be a bigger part of my life. And so I met a friend who became my business partner, and we decided to start a theater company together. Essentially, we started a studio, a school.
Right.
It's called InterMountain Performing Arts Conservatory. We call it IMPAC.
Yeah.
And IMPAC is a studio that teaches musical theater primarily to kids, all ages, but primarily kids between the ages of about 8 and 18.
Right.
And we teach acting, we teach dance, we teach singing, and then we started a nonprofit theater company adjacent to it, started producing shows.
Right.
And so that's been a really big part of my life these last couple of years. But I also became good friends with Brooke Twitchell, who previously held this job, and she needed some part-time help. And when you're starting a new business, it never hurts to have a little side job. Right?
Yeah, I need a little side gig. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I started working for her part-time, and I think a couple months after I started working for her, she announced that she was leaving to go to BCI.
Oh, yeah.
So it just seemed like a natural fit for me. I've been producing theater for a long time. I mean, theater is essentially an event.
An event, yeah, exactly.
And so I felt like transferring those skills over and, having something secure with, the reason you like to get a career, right? I mean, the benefits and being in something a little more stable. We still have the theater company. It's doing great. But this role certainly takes up a lot more of my time than I had originally anticipated, but I love it.
One thing I really love about the theater, and I went to your White Christmas show this last Christmas season, holiday season, and I loved not only that you're trying to make White Christmas an annual tradition. Yeah. So if you don't know IMPAC Theater and you love White Christmas, I mean, that's just a classic. Go to IMPAC Theater. But what I love about IMPAC Theater is you have an adult cast and you have a youth cast. Yeah. And that adult cast, as you've explained to me, mentors that youth cast. Yeah. And so I just thought that concept was so cool because I remember doing theater. My first play was the Phantom of the Soap Opera. And I just remember being so naive, in fact, that I didn't know I had one of the lead parts until partway through the production. I realized I was the detective that was solving the crime of the Phantom and all these things. But it would have been so cool to have an adult that I could look up to or someone that's done it before and give me little pointers and tips because, I was just a kid just having fun with theater. And anyways, I loved theater, in high school and middle school and everything. So I just thought that was so cool.
Well, thank you. We are really proud of that model. I mean, we jumped into it like we do a lot of things, not knowing whether or not it would work because I've never seen it done anywhere else. And when it seems like there must be a reason nobody else is doing this, right?
Right, yeah. But sometimes that's where the niche is, right? Yeah. Like, why isn't anybody doing this? I mean, you just did The Addams Family, right? And you sold out, and then you had to add an extra day, right? Just because so many people were requesting it. Now, granted, the space is it's kind of a small space, sure. But I love that. It's theater on the round, right? I mean, it's an intimate space. It's awesome. Tell the address of where IMPAC
Sure,
Theater
it's 389 North, 100 West. It's actually in the little Alpine Commercial Shopping Center behind
State Bank, right?
Yeah, behind State Bank, and also it's in the same parking lot that the old Iron County Today building was in. Now it's a salon. Okay, but we're in the back corner there. A deceptively large space, actually. I mean,
it looks small.
Right,
it looks like a little tiny strip mall.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got the corner office, is what's going on.
Yeah. And it's about 2,200 square feet in there. Our main space is about 1,500 square feet, and that's where we do our performances. And we have audiences of about 80 people. And what I think is really cool. So for those who are tuned into children's theater here in town, right? CCCMT, the musical theater, City Children's Musical Theater. What an incredible program they have, right? And they've been doing it forever, and they do such a great job. I mean, working with all those kids, and it's hundreds of kids.
Yeah,
right?
they were essential in the Pioneer Day celebration that the Osmonds just put on, right?
Yes, they were. And they always do a phenomenal job. We had no intention coming in to say, like, let's do what they're doing, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they do it too well. We're not going to compete with that. But what we did see was an opportunity to sort of supplement what they do by offering some more specialized, individualized training. A little bit more like hands-on, smaller experience. And so we keep our shows while they do these they're doing SpongeBob, which is, they're going to have a huge cast.
That just cracks me up. I've got to go see that.
I can't wait to see it. I'm excited about it.
You know what I realized? Sorry, side note. Yeah. SpongeBob's laugh is just the sound of a dolphin. So next time you watch SpongeBob, should I try to impersonate it? It's like, it's just the sound of a dolphin. We'll see how that translates. Anyways,
okay.
But yeah.
Well, we just thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was something, with a little smaller, more niche, so we do casts. Our shows only have cast sizes of between 16 and 20 people.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
great.
We double that up by having an adult cast and a youth cast, like you said, and they mentor, the adults mentor the youth throughout the process. It's really, I feel like it's just a whole nother experience, a chance for those students that are really interested in the theater, right?
Right.
To get a little bit more training, to get another leg up in their skill set, and
Right.
be around people and to be able to watch. I can't tell you as a professional actor how many times I've played a role and thought, man, I wish I could just see somebody else do this. What I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well, okay. So there's a couple things that I want to go through, and I definitely want to circle back around to events here in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that's interesting to me that I think is interesting to local businesses, to economic development, is even though it's IMPAC Theater is a nonprofit, you still have to go through all the hoops that any local business would have to go through, right?
Right.
Securing a building, whatever financing or investment, marketing. So walk me through, very high level, for just very brief and high level, like what were some of the sticking points as you were trying to make that happen, and where did you find some of your successes in that?
Yeah, sure. So we're in an interesting, we have an interesting setup because our school is a for-profit business, and our theater company, which runs adjacent to it, is a nonprofit.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So you kind of got this dual
separate businesses.
Oh, okay,
running.
cool.
And the theater company almost has to be nonprofit, right?
Yeah,
because especially if you want to be eligible for any kind of grant money, it's much more dependent on fundraising, because with the way expenses, the way prices of things are going up, the cost of producing theater, of course, obviously goes up. And if you want to keep ticket prices accessible at all for people, there's no way that your ticket prices are going to cover the cost of what you're doing. Not if you want to do high quality theater
productions. Yeah.
So, going through that process was essential for us, and a big part of it obviously was, getting a board together, getting a good group of people. We have a great board. Scott Phillips is on our board.
Yeah, I was going to say, name a few that's on your board.
Brooke Twitchell, Don Jersey, Robert and Shirley Kramer, Caleb Reese,
Awesome.
Julie Griffin. And then me and Tam. It's just a great group of people, and we just added Jennifer Denhalter as well. So,
and the name of your partner again?
Tamara Merkley.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, she's great. So we had to get the board together, and then then you've got to incorporate it, right? You've got to go through. We went to David Westwood and Westwood Law, and they helped us out. There are obviously lots of attorneys in town who can help with that. That's who we went to, and they did a great job and charged us a smaller fee because it's a nonprofit.
Yeah, awesome.
So that was really nice. And
how about finding a building, securing that, getting your equipment, all that? I'm sure that's got to be a pain, right?
It is.
I always admire small business owners. So I'm entrepreneurial, but I'm all about low risk. And so hence my job in economic development is out there trying to help the businesses because my father-in-law still owns small businesses, and I just marvel every time at the ups and downs of small business and trying to make it happen, whether it's securing a building, cheaper rent, or wherever. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the location is just based on where can you get a good rent from. So talk a little bit about those hurdles.
Yeah, we lucked out on the rent. As far as the size of our space, it's... it is stressful, right? Knowing that you gotta that rent check has gotta come every month, right? And where's it gonna come from?
Yeah.
You gotta keep programming, especially with musical theater. It's interesting because if you rent a dance studio, you can do dance is an interesting art form where you can do drop-in classes. You can have ongoing, every Friday this class goes on and anybody can drop in. You don't have to sign up for this period of time. When you get into things like acting and in musical theater, a lot of times it's tough to do those ongoing, anybody can drop in at any time because you're working on a curriculum that builds, right? And so if you have to almost do these 4-week, 6-week long sessions. And we've experimented with all kinds of lengths just to try and see what people are most interested in. Right now, we're about to go into our fall where we have 3 4-week musical theater sessions that we're going to do that end with a musical review performance. It's going to be a lot of fun. They're all themed. We're doing a Disney Wish Upon a Star, and then we're going to do a Disney Villains one, and then we're going to do a holiday review in November. So figuring out, I think that's been the hardest part, is figuring out how to get the programming right that is the right amount of time for people, for them to commit.
Right.
And that does make, paying the rent stressful, because we're still trying to figure that stuff out. Finding a building is a funny story. We actually, when we got the idea to start the business, we were like, this is maybe like a 2024 start, right? I think we were originally thinking it would take us a little while, but let's wander around and see if we can find out what's out there for us, because we have such a unique
need or offering.
Exactly. And so we started wandering around and checking out different spaces, and we found this space, and it was an old martial arts studio. And we walked in there, and the minute we walked in, it had an upstairs studio, a downstairs studio, these smaller, like 200 square foot spaces.
Did you have any flashes of Cobra Kai or anything in there?
Well, maybe a little, actually. But yeah, and then this big 1,500 square foot space, and they already had a couple mirrors up on the wall. We had had some more, but we walked in there, and even though it didn't look anything like it looks right now, we saw it. We walked in there and we saw what it was going to look like.
It's love at first sight.
Yeah.
You can envision it.
Yep. And the rent was, considering the size of the space, the rent was reasonable. And we just kind of both looked at each other and said, I guess we're doing it. I guess we're starting now.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I do want to move on to events, but I have one thing that I want to know about Brandon Burk, and it's kind of about Brandon Burk. Fred Adams, you were with Shakespeare Festival. And Fred Adams is a beloved person in the community. Having worked for Shakespeare, I'm sure you knew Fred personally, right?
Yeah, I was very close with Fred, yeah.
Yeah, so tell me, and you could choose either about your first experience meeting Fred Adams or one of your favorite experiences with Fred Adams. And maybe that's hard to choose, and I'm kind of throwing a curveball at you. But
No. I have so many favorite experiences with Fred. And I think one of the most honored moments in my life was, and this is kind of, sad because it was after his passing, but I was asked to be a pallbearer for his services. And just being that, knowing that people saw me as that much of a part of his life, that I was invited in that way was really beautiful. Touching. My son, who was about a year old, his name is Frederick. When Fred was a Fred, he wasn't a Frederick. But it's sort
your
of a
son
tip
goes
of the
by
hat.
Freddie. Yeah, little Freddie.
Yeah. And that's a little bit of a tip of the hat to Fred Adams.
I love that. I didn't even know that. I didn't even put that together.
Yeah.
I love that.
But Fred just was, and I know everybody that's ever met Fred feels this way about him. He was your best friend the second you walked into the room, even if you'd never met him before. He was so genuine and just so easy to connect to, so down to earth. I mean, the guy I'll share a couple quick things. We used to come to the festival, and Fred, who had been running this festival for, since 1962, when they built the new space, you'd come and you'd see him out there like wiping down tables and like planting flowers and
man of the people.
Exactly.
Not above it. Yeah.
No, he helped make the magic that was the Utah Shakespeare Festival, that is this Utah Shakespeare Festival. And but I think one of my favorite things, so Fred and I had a thing for socks. We both love really elaborate
I noticed
socks.
You're always wearing the crazy socks. Yeah.
And so like anytime we'd see each other, pass each other on campus, I'd go, "What are you wearing today, Fred?" And he'd show me his socks and I'd show him mine.
I almost bought you some Elton John socks,
that's
by the
cool.
way.
I'll still take them.
Yeah, well, but I'll save that as a gift for later.
All right. Well, there was one
his
time,
favorite singer's Elton John, by the way.
It is.
We need
Sir
to make that
Elton
clear.
John.
Sir Elton John.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Mine's Weezer, and that's a whole nother 12 podcasts, but we'll go into that later.
But I showed up at an opening barbecue one year, and I think it was 2017 maybe, and I saw Fred and said, "What are you wearing today, Fred?" And he showed me his socks, and they were the same as mine.
No.
So we have this photo of the two of us with our legs up on a chair showing our socks. And because we had that connection, I showed up. I was so excited when I got hired full time at the festival, because the festival is just such a huge part of my life, and I just loved everything about it. And I had a little office my first day of work at the festival full time, the year that I started in development. I showed up in my office, and there were a pair of socks on my desk.
Oh, that's
Fred.
awesome.
So he just.
That's beautiful. So what socks did you wear as the pallbearer? Did you go bland, or did you wear something?
No, I definitely wore something. That's a good question, though. It might have been flamingos.
That's great.
I know Fred and Scott and Jill Schuler, who just passed away.
Yeah,
used
love
to
Jill.
throw this, or they still throw this flamingo party every year, and it was a big part of them, right, and their connections. So
that's great. This is a great segue, because and being an outsider that moved here just in the last year, how I knew Cedar City was the Shakespeare Festival. I grew up in the military. I remember going to high school, and I had an English teacher who would take kids up to the Shakespeare Festival every year. And I never was able to afford to go on the trip or fundraise or however they did it. And but I always longed to go to it. And Shakespeare Festival is really why we are Festival City, USA.
Yeah.
And that segues really great into why we have so many events and why we are such proponents of events. Everything from, the half marathon to the, we're talking about July Jamboree, to even farmers markets that we have here. We've got a variety of things that we try to offer for this quality of life. One of the events I really want you to dive into, because you're a runner, I'm a runner, which is funny. By the way, not only we really probably are twins is the thing, because on that night when people confused us as twins, and people internally at work still will come up to me and be like, "Oh wait, you're not Brandon. Where's Brandon?"
I get it
and
too.
so they have to like pause and like really look at you. And I'm like, I always wear a suit coat and Brandon doesn't. I mean, that should at least give it away. But our birthdays are only a week apart to the year.
7 days. Yeah, it's exactly a week. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
The 17th.
Yeah, I'm the 17th and you're the 10th, right? That's just so crazy to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I'm really blabbing here. Talk to me about the half marathon, because you ran it several years before you volunteered. Talk to me about what it does for the community. I mean, as a runner, I've also organized several events, running events, and growing a running event isn't as easy as maybe it sounds. So tell me about half marathon, number of participants, and what we hope for the future, and maybe give me a few quirky things. The quirky things I'm talking about that you love about the half marathon. So go ahead, dive into it.
Yeah. Okay. So, there's a lot there. I first of all, like you said, I mean, I've run about a little over 40 half marathons, and this one I've run
40?
8 times.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought I was cool because I've run like a half a dozen or a dozen or so. Anyways, keep going.
Well, the half marathon's my distance.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I love the half marathon.
Wow.
But my first half marathon was the Cedar City half marathon. And
Really? That's where
I've
it all
run
started.
it 8 times since then.
And I'm running it this year.
Yeah.
I'm really behind on my training.
That's okay.
Yeah,
It'll be all
fine.
right. It's downhill. Let the gravity take you.
Yeah, apparently.
But this is a great race. I always tell people, if you're going to run your first half marathon, run this one. If this is your first, run Cedar. It's the best first half marathon. It's even though it's got about 2,000 feet to drop, but it's gradual. It's not too bad.
Gives you a little ego boost with that drop, right?
Exactly.
Like, I can do this.
Yeah, exactly. And you never really have it levels out towards the bottom, but you never really have a lot of these downhill half marathons. I feel like the last mile or two is like a sharp uphill for some reason. I think Parowan does that around mile 12, starts to climb.
Yeah.
And so this one is just a really great, ease you into doing a half marathon. I love it's still probably it's definitely one of my top 2 favorite half marathons that I've ever run.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, it's one of the reasons I've run it so
He's
many
not just saying that
times.
because he's the events director.
No,
yeah.
I mean, like I said, I've come back and run it every year before I ever knew I was going to be involved in this way. It's such a beautiful run coming down through that canyon. When you come out and you can see, it's around mile 4 that you see Ashdown Gorge, and
And we completely closed the highway just for the run. So it's all yours.
Exactly. And there are some fun quirks. We do a really great finish line. We have a live band. We have really great food. We have some food trucks coming. We got lots of photo ops. I mean, it's a party.
Yeah, but that's not the important stuff. The important stuff is the bagpipe guy.
Yes,
so tell me, I'm like, is there some sort of Scottish heritage or whatever going on with Cedar City? I was so confused by the bagpipe guy.
Yeah.
But we love it. He's in our branding. So talk about the bagpipe guy.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if that's culturally offensive to phrase it that way. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think we're good.
And then let's dive into all of our other events and what those top events are and why they're so great. So, but tell me the history of our bagpipe player.
I got to be honest with you. The bagpipe guy is a complete mystery. My understanding,
it's like State Farm.
My understanding of it is that just one year they said, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had a bagpiper on the?" And he's standing. It's a really good. If you haven't run it, it's right before you get to that opening where you see Ashdown Gorge.
Oh, so it's not like at the start line.
No, it's like 3 miles
beginning.
in. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so you come around.
You're just running by. Here's this guy in his kilt.
Yeah, and and if you go, so when you drive up that canyon road, you know that the section right after Ashdown Gorge on the right, where it's like a giant rock wall. That's about where he is, and he's across from that wall. And there's this perfect little like rock stage that's basically this natural rock stage that's there. And he's standing up there. We actually have 2 bagpipers sometimes, and they're standing up there and playing as you go by. And it's just like it's like an energy boost. It's kind of a really cool thing. I wish I knew how it started or why it started, but it has become part of the culture and part of the race so much that the branding of the race has actually shifted to, I think last year Burk did a medal that was a bagpiper.
Oh yeah, the medal was the bagpipe guy. Well, I noticed too on the poster this year, because I was so bewildered by bagpipe guy, that you made him a little more subtle. I noticed on the poster, in the shadows of the rocks behind the runners is bagpipe guy.
Yep.
Like he's there. He is supporting you. He's tooting the horn or whatever the nickname for a bagpipe is.
Yeah.
Somebody with more cultural sense is going to have to educate me on that. But yeah, I just think that's so great. And it's fun to have quirky little traditions that sometimes happen out of nowhere and become popular.
And I think as time goes on, you'll see even more. We're just going to start embracing it.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be, we have a billboard.
Maybe
on
we could set the world record for fastest half marathon in a kilt or something. Yeah, we need to go for that.
I have at least one friend who runs this race in a kilt.
I was going to say, I just don't want to see you in the kilt because our working relationship may change a little bit. That might be a little too much for me.
Yeah.
But, okay, so moving on from the half marathon, because I could talk about that forever. I love how we talked or we spoke a lot about theater. Tell me about some of our other events. And the one I'm really thinking of, so I started last November.
Yeah.
And my family was still moving out. And so I was kind of here by myself. And then I think it was only in the first few weeks that I was here when we did the holiday lighting. And I remember walking down Cedar City Main Street, and every tree has lights on it. There's the lights going across Main Street. It's beautiful. And on at City Hall is a custom stage where you're having performers dance, and then SUU flies in a helicopter and Santa comes barreling out.
Yeah.
I turn to one of our coworkers, Gabby Costello, who's our communications person, and I said to her, I feel like I'm in a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
And then I jokingly said, I feel like I'm going to turn around and my wife and kids are just going to be there and surprise me on this holiday miracle, because I was, living in a bachelor pad, kind of moving out here. I was just so impressed by it. And maybe it was Christmas sentiment. Maybe it was my loneliness of being a bachelor after, 17 years waiting for my family for a couple months to move out. But for me, it was magical.
Yeah.
I just loved it. So tell me about it, because I know our community is really proud of that holiday lighting, and it's one of our big to-dos. So talk a little bit about it, if you know any history about it, or just whatever you want to say. I know Scott
Yeah.
Phillips loves it, and he's a champion for that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. It's one of my, we're in, I mean, believe it or not, we're in like the heat of organizing that event. Right?
Yeah, if you don't know, a good event for our audience, a good event starts planning minimum of 6 months in advance, if
at
not
least
a year in advance, meaning the day the event ends, the next day you're recapping and planning the next year, right?
Right. We're already building. I mean, for the half marathon's perfect example. We're already building the registration page and doing the artwork for next year, even though this year's hasn't
even happened yet. So you're more than a year in advance.
Right. Because a lot of runners like to book their stuff a year in advance, or the beginning of the year. And with this, in particular, it's like you want to open registration the day that everybody, as soon as they cross that finish line, you want them to go, I want to do this again. And you need to give them the opportunity
funny part
to do
is
it again.
Right before you cross the finish line, you're like, I hate this. I'm never doing it again. You cross the finish line, they put that medal around your neck. Yep. You get an IV if you need it. I've only had to have that happen once. And then you're like, I bet I could do that again. Right? Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But so with the downtown lighting, I think Hallmark movie is probably the most uttered sentiment about that event.
Yeah.
If you took our surveys that we do every year and did one of those word clouds, where it makes like whatever word is said the most, the biggest in the middle, and then it has all the other words circled around it, Hallmark movie would be at the center of that word cloud. I feel like that's most people's reaction. And there is something magical about it. I mean, I think part of it is just sort of the magic of our historic downtown area and the way that it feels being down there with the old storefronts and the old Cedar Hotel and the Boomers building and it's just something about the aesthetic.
Yeah.
But also, like you said, there's so much going on. It's such I don't know.
Yeah, there was a little train taking the kids around. And I don't know that happens every year, but you have Candy Cane Lane.
Exactly.
And it was the first time I tried whatever that corn dog. I'm trying to remember. What's the corn dog?
Corn Dog Company?
Corn Dog Company. That's just the name of it, right? That's why I can't even remember the name because it's so simple. Yeah. Anyways, some hot chocolate. The hot chocolate sold out like nothing.
Yeah. And so this year's one of the things, in addition to the festivities, which includes things like we have an amazing fireworks show, a Santa showing up in a helicopter and landing right on Main Street, a live performance of dances and music that happen on a stage that's built, like you said, in front of City Hall, which is directed by Scott Phillips. Which is
there you go.
So much.
And there's a little changes that are happening this year,
Every
right?
year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about some of the little changes this year that the people will find unique.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that you'll find different this year is our Christmas market. So last year we introduced a new Christmas market, and we had put it in like a tent around Candy Cane Lane is what you called it. It's that space between the old Cedar Hotel and the parking garage. This year, we're actually moving that market inside into what's called the venue now, which used to be the old Cedar City Movie Theater.
Oh, yeah. So where Ganache is, right?
Exactly.
Behind them is the venue. It's great open space for events.
Great open space, yeah. They do weddings there and receptions and things like that, any kind of banquet. So they've got a nice, beautiful, renovated space in there. We're going to move that inside. We'll have food trucks again, but this year they'll be on Center Street between Main and 100 West.
Kind of where the Catholic thrift store is?
No, on the other side between the pub and the winery.
Okay, on that side.
So we'll have some of those up there.
Are you doing like a or somebody's doing some sort of manger scene on the other side of Center? Kind of where
we do
that
Nativity, live Nativity.
Thank you.
Yep, that's the Interfaith Alliance that helps us support that, and live
great.
Animals, and they do it right outside the old Rock Church there on Center Street, between 100 East and Main Street. And the helicopter lands on the south side of the street. The biggest change this year is that market moving inside, which I think is going to be a big boon.
Yeah, a little warmer.
Yeah, exactly. It was very cold last year.
And is this space bigger than the tent that was outside?
It's about the
relative?
same. Yeah, it's about the same.
All right.
And then we have, we've got strolling performers taking pictures with people. We have a face painter. We have a kids craft zone where kids can go and make a Christmas ornament. And, we're going to have a section where people can fill out cards that we're going to send to a local organization, Christmas cards for a local organization. And We'll do a canned food drive for Care and Share, and the Wood Turners Association makes a Christmas ornament that we'll sell to raise money for another organization. And it's just there's a lot. There's so much to do.
Right.
We're looking at the possibility right now. We're trying to figure it out. We're hoping to have carriage rides around the city that'll take you up Main Street and then around and down by Shakespeare Festival.
Don't get anybody's hopes up.
I know.
You may have a young man planning to propose to his significant other, and
We'll
he's
find
counting
another
on
way
those
for
carriage
him
rides.
to do it. If
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So you heard it here. If you're planning to propose to your girlfriend on the carriage rides and the carriage rides don't happen, contact Brandon Burk.
That's right.
He'll help you coordinate and make it part of the event. If you want to do it on stage,
That's exactly right.
maybe we should have a submission form for this.
We definitely
are in a college
should.
town,
we
right?
definitely should do that. Yeah. You want Santa to do it for you, whatever.
There you
know.
go. Yeah. Santa could bring the ring in out of his bag.
Right. Anything's possible for a small sponsorship fee.
That's right. Yeah. On those college dimes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so anything else that you want to highlight with events and maybe maybe tie it back into the economic impact and why we are Festival City USA and why these events are so important to our community from both economic development to quality of life. How would you summarize events here in Cedar City?
Yeah. I would say, it's such a unique town because people really do come out and support, and events are important to this community for a lot of reasons, and they're a part of this community for a lot of reasons. One, because we are where we are, and we rely on people coming in from outside because it is a small town, right, in order to support our businesses, to support our economy. Having things that draw people here, big events, small events, whatever it is, even our moonwalk brings people in from outside of town. And that started as a very small race. We sold out at 350 people this year. We're going to up it to 500 next year. Because
we're one of the biggest small towns around in the state, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. But people come from all over for that now, and it's crazy.
That's awesome.
So there's that. There is the economy. There is bringing people in. There's the tourism. There's the boosting local businesses. But also, this town, more than any other town I've ever been in, and I've lived in a handful, has this sense of community spirit, this sense of helping out. And these events, I am essentially a one-person department. I have an assistant, and that's it. We are, the events department, and we rely on...
Shout out to Megan.
Shout out to Megan for sure. And shout out to, Gabby Costello, who helps out, and the rest of the economic
and all the
team.
volunteers and volunteer committees. Yeah.
So the volunteers are the lifeblood of every event that we do.
Absolutely.
We do have, by the way, a link on our events page as well that lets you sign up for volunteer opportunities.
Can you say that link in your best radio show voice?
It's cedarcityutah.gov/events.
Nice. All right.
And
if you want to volunteer.
Yep. And there's a little button that says volunteer. You click on that button and it'll give you a little sign up form and it'll put you on our email list. So whenever we have opportunities to volunteer for an event, we'll have one going out here soon for the half marathon. People can go there and sign up and we will get them emails and information about how to do that. We've really been working this year on our volunteer program and how that works. Eventually what we'd like to do, and this will happen, so I don't mind saying it. Eventually what we'd like to do is start doing a yearly recognition event for our volunteers where we do a nice dinner, we give out awards. But right now we're building our database and we've been creating a new structure for volunteering. So if you volunteered for events in the past, things are a little bit different now. What we have is, various shifts, lots of details. We're working on getting that system down so that the volunteering is a no-brainer for people.
Yeah.
People just want to show up. They know exactly what it's expected of them, when they're there from. They usually get fed and a T-shirt. And, we take good care of our volunteers because we know that our events don't happen.
Well, the sense of community here has just blown me away. I've joked because I was an economic development director for a very high-growth city up north. Then I was a city manager for a very remote rural town. And I joke that Cedar City, I'm the Goldilocks of Cedar City because Cedar City's just right, And what makes it right for me, and this is where I'm tying it in with the volunteers, is I have never seen the level of collaboration anywhere that I've worked for the last 17 years that I've seen in Cedar City and Iron County.
Yeah.
I mean, the collaboration where people come together simply because they love their community so much. And that's not to say other places I've been, people haven't loved their community, but people who have starkly different opinions or starkly different roles come together and say, hey, we have this common bond of we love where we live. And it is such a great place to be or visit. If you're not from here, come visit Cedar City. That's the whole shtick with Visit Cedar City Bryan Head is we're saying we're a great place to come play.
Yeah. Oh, and we haven't even talked. I mean, we're talking about events. We haven't even talked about the things to do around here. We're so close to all the national parks. But I want to jump back in real quick to what you were just saying. We just got done doing the first year here of our Pioneer Legacy event. Right?
Yes,
which is
that was what I kind of wanted to circle around with. Yeah.
And what an incredible event.
Put on by Justin
and Merrill Osmond.
Yep.
Yep, and a whole team of people. And
Yeah.
I had the privilege of being on the executive committee, organizing committee for
I
that
heard
event.
people that have lived here for 40 years say, I learned more about Iron County and Cedar City in that event than in my whole time living here.
They did. They tied it into our community. And this is an event that they've traveled around and done at other places. And for a while, it had a home down at formerly Dixie State.
Utah Tech now.
Yeah, it was Utah Tech now. But when they were down there, that's what it was. And they were, COVID shut them down. Live events went away for a little while. And when they decided to come back, they wanted a place that felt, was a little cooler in July for one.
Yeah, and just so people know, we're around what does my watch say? We're at about 5,600 feet here, or depending where you're at, sometimes 6,000 feet, Cedar City.
6, yeah.
Yeah.
And they found it in Cedar City. They found what they were looking for. And Justin said throughout that whole process, Justin and Merrill both said Merrill wrote this really long, great letter to the executive.
They were
committee
so
afterwards.
gracious.
They're
too.
so wonderful.
Yeah.
The whole family, just wonderful people. But they were so blown away by exactly what you were just saying, which was how eager everyone was to be involved, to help out, to do something, to be a part of it.
Right.
And that event, they said, it's the best one they've ever done because
And they've done it around the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just, in today's society too, and especially with all the divisiveness, you don't always get that sense. And I think that's, and this is a good kind of closing for today's podcast. So is the purpose of this podcast is not only to highlight economic development, local business, and quality of life, but it's to highlight the positive things going on in our community. Mm-hmm. We really want to talk about the great things that we have right here for both our local community to feel more informed and know and understand what's going on, from everything to the Green Show at Shakespeare that's free, to the July Jamboree, to the farmers market, to the half marathon, to the holiday lighting. I mean, those are just some of the events. And not only that, we're in the downtown, we've got all these wonderful small businesses and all throughout town. I mean, there's just so much to do. And I like to tell people that in Cedar City, you can go 30 minutes one way and go skiing on the slopes, and 30 minutes the other way and go mountain biking or skiing on the water at Sand Hollow. So there's just so much to do. And if you don't know this, Cedar City, back in the day with the railroad, Union Pacific dubbed Cedar City the gateway to the parks. There's so much to do. Brandon, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, being one of our first guests. And, I never get to see you, so we'll see you back at the office a little bit later today.
Sure.
So, all
Thanks,
right.
David.
Appreciate it. Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah, you too, man.